after much deliberation, and by the way, I'm so happy my kids graduated college long ago. After much deliberation and a conversation with Anthony, I concluded, since I've been in this insurance business for the past 15 years, I learned a lot, much of which I wish I knew when I was an insurance prospect. So with that, I decided that this presentation would be on what you don't know about life insurance could hurt you. So before, whoops, I'm sorry, I have to go back and from the beginning. Okay, almost got it perfect. So who am I? So as I've said in the past, I've been in the sales for 50 years, probably even more than 50 years if I count my paper route where I made top producer for most new customers when I was about 13 years old. I started my business, the promotional products business, in 1970 when nobody even knew what promotional products was. So you can imagine the challenges of selling things that nobody knew what it was about. Towards the end of that career, I developed a training company called Group Motivation and Training, which was a subsidiary of my promotion company, where we did training programs for companies like BMW, Jaguar, Canon, Dreyfus, and a bunch of banks that probably most of them don't even exist anymore due to mergers and acquisitions. After 30 years, I love that. It was just around the turn of the century. I sold the business and I started working with a .com company providing B2B credit via the internet, which was a little bit early in the internet's career, but it was quite an experience for a promotional salesman like me. At the ripe old age of 60, I started Generation Wealth Advisors. So the question, why do people buy life insurance? We all heard this when we were younger. If something happens to you, usually hit by a bus, your loved ones, will they be able to live the life that you want them to? And there's a lot of truth in this statement, and there's a lot of emotion. And life insurance back then, or even today for the most part, is sold on emotion. But there's a myth. And the myth from the investment world is buy term and invest the difference. So here's 10 truths I'd like to share with you very quickly about permanent life insurance. That would be whole life or universal life. First, principal protection guarantees your money. There's no loss of your money. You know, it's not subject to the ebb and flow of the market. Your money's growth is guaranteed year after year. This was a little challenging for me. I couldn't figure out how to get 3 before 4, so you'll have to forgive me. But you know, there's a lot of ways of structuring a life insurance contract. In the business community, they use a product that's called the high early cash value. That's corporate-owned insurance. People don't really use that, but that's a tremendous way of purchasing life insurance. You're actually building, in a sense, your own bank. It allows you to buy products, fund things, do whatever you want. Dividends paid to policyholders are not taxable, as opposed to putting it into the market or whatever. Access to your cash at any age. It's your money. You could access that money to do whatever you want with it, with no tax and no penalty. The ability to use your account's cash value on major purchases. I have a client who is using their cash value to fund the 529 plan, rather than the traditional 529 plan. So it's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. The insurance is guaranteed. Once you buy a permanent policy, no matter what your future health issues are, you're guaranteed insurance. And like I said before, you could use that money for a lot of different reasons. I have one client who's borrowing from their cash value and lending the money out at a higher interest rate. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. Who would have thought that with an insurance contract? Long-term care, today you could put long-term care inside of your insurance contract rather than buying a standalone. I believe personally it's the best way to purchase long-term care. And of course, the death benefit. That's kind of what we all started with. So there's a lot of reasons to buy permanent life insurance rather than buying term and investing the difference. So what if I asked you, what's the greatest attribute of your 401k or your current qualified plan? Many of you have 401ks, some have IRAs. In your mind, if you think about it, and by the way, I don't sell these, I just like to ask the question, what's the greatest attribute in your mind? Some of you may say forced savings or things like that, but truthfully, the best attribute of your qualified plan is that your money is growing tax deferred. Think about tax deferred growth as opposed to ordinary growth. If you get tax deferred growth at 6-7%, you'd have to make 3-4% more than that outside of a qualified plan. Well, guess what? Life insurance is the only other financial instrument that grows tax deferred. Wow, what a concept. Using the life insurance product to fund a retirement plan, who would ever thunk it? If you look at your 401ks at 19,000 or your IRAs at 6,000, and by the way, statistically, a 45-year-old earning $250,000 and maxing their 401k will have a 40% shortfall at their retirement if they want to maintain that lifestyle. So hypothetically, of course, if I asked you, if I said to you, I should say, the Internal Revenue just notified me and said, hey, guess what? You could put as much money in your 401k or your qualified plan, let's say, as you would like to. How much more would each of you contribute? Just think of a number. How much more would each of you put into that retirement plan if the IRA took the ceiling off of it? Well, I know this is hard to see, but I'm just going to kind of run through it. Here's an insurance policy on a 29-year-old that I did a few years ago. He's putting $12,000 a year into this policy. He's 29 years old. He's going to put it into age 65. This is a universal life policy. It's called an IUL. We use a 6.12% assumption on growth. This is based on what the S&P will do over this 37 years of accumulation. So he's putting $444,000 into this policy. At age 70, if this comes true, and by the way, keep in mind that this year the S&P is already up to almost 20%. So 6% is pretty conservative. He'll be able to pull $438,000, almost $493,000 a year out of this contract from age 70 to 85. That's almost over $7 million. And by the way, that's all tax-free. How much would you have to take out of your qualified plan to net $439,000? Just think about that for a moment. And by the way, at his life expectancy, he'll still have over $1 million of death benefit in this policy. So who would ever thought of using life insurance to supplement a Roth IRA? This is a little video. If anybody wants to see it, I'm not going to put it out there, but just send me an email, or this will be on the back end of the, and you can see this little video that kind of talks about this conceptually. So that's kind of my take on life insurance. I kind of wish that I knew all of this when I was 30 years old. God knows where I'd be today if I used life insurance. Don't forget, when I was 30 years old, there was no IRAs and there were no 401ks. So we all believed we were going to retire on Social Security. Now, a little bit about private placement, if I could, because that's really what my primary business is, and you've heard me talk about it over the months. Private placement is nothing more than just the box, okay? The chassis of the box is pure insurance. It's the net amount of risk. What we're doing in the bottom of this box is we're putting this pure insurance contract. It's a guaranteed universal life contract as the chassis of this box. Inside the box, we're putting all your investments that are taxable investments, of course, RIA controlled, hedge funds, private equity. We're doing IPO and IPO funds right now. We actually just got a case from Deloitte on a pre-IPO situation. So that's pretty exciting. And this is kind of the structure of a private placement life insurance. So we call this PPLI 2.0. The 2.0 refers to this PMC, which is private mortality coverage. This is what separates us from the other 5 or 6 carriers out there in the PPLI world. This private mortality coverage allows us to use guaranteed universal life as a chassis, as opposed to other companies that use annual increasing term. So that allows us to build a perfect structure. When we build that perfect structure, so here's an example, for example, using PMC. Here's a pretty successful investment banker, had a $40 million insurance contract. He had built over $20 million of cash value in the contract. Should he continue as is, this is on this side, it's a whole life contract. This is what the outcome will be over his life expectancy. The problem, and what his CPA brought him to us, is because he was complaining that his cash value was going down, because so much of the growth of the insurance inside the cash value was predicated on the bond market, and bonds aren't doing so great these days. So what we did is we took his $40 million contract, we took his $21 million cash value, gave it to his financial advisor. We don't do that. His financial advisor said I could get easily 7% growth on my client's money. That's considerably more than the insurance company was paying him. So by getting this 7%, if you look at mortality somewhere around 88 years old, he's going to have an additional almost $30 million of cash in his estate for doing nothing more or less than just taking it out of the left pocket and putting it in the right pocket. Didn't change anything, got his insurance. He's just getting a better return on his money, tax-free, by putting it into a private placement life insurance contract. So that's kind of what we do. In the remaining 15 minutes, I was thinking about this, and over my career, selling promotional products and now selling insurance, it takes a lot of persistence to get to the prospect. And even when you believe you have the right solution at the right time for the right situation. And I always felt that when people would tell me I was persistent, it was kind of like a negative connotation. But, I learned over the years that, a lot of things get done through persistence. So, here's a perfect example of a salesman over here on the right with the right item at the right time in the right situation. And he can't seem to get the attention of the prospect who's about to go into battle with his 2 trusted servants behind him to do battle with about 1,000 soldiers coming up the hill. I think if he turned around and took the advice of the salesman, again, with the right product, the right time, in the right situation, I think he'd be a lot better off. I think we could all agree to that. So persistence, I found this not too long ago, and I do send it to people when they tell me I'm persistent, and I'd be glad to share it with all of you, but nothing in the world could take the place of persistence. Talent would not. Nothing is more common than successful men with talent. Genius would not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone, omnipotent. The slogan, press on, is solved and will always solve the problems of the human race. And you could see who was responsible for that. It certainly wasn't Harvey Feinberg. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today. I thank you. And, if anybody wants any of that information, that video, just send me an email, put Super Roth in the subject, and I'd be glad to send it to you. And I see I have about 20 seconds left to say thank you.
Fantastic, Harvey.
Great job, Harvey.
Very informative
impressive.
today. Once again,
Harvey, one
very
question.
informative.
So concise.
You were talking about something called a high earning, and I lost the other two words.
I'm sorry, ask again.
It was an account. You said it was called a high earning something
Okay,
account.
the insurance contract, and who asked the question?
That's me, Oscar.
So, you could get a whole life contract, high early cash value. Basically what you're doing is you're putting your premium, and almost from the day one, the amount of cash value you have in that contract is equal to the amount of premium you pay. And over a year or two, it'll grow. And a lot of corporations do this because then they'll buy equipment using that money rather than going to the bank and funding it through a bank. That's how they'll do. That's what they'll do. So
That's what I heard. It's a self-funding bank, basically.
kind of, yeah. It's exactly, and it's just it's an insurance contract. It's just, insurance contracts. What makes them unique is how you structure them, and
Thank
there's so much variety and so much variation. Just like in our private placement, we're just structuring a policy to handle to allow investors to take advantage of it and get tax-free growth on their investments.
Got it.
And Harvey, just got to put it out there. I totally appreciate what you said about persistence, but I think patience goes hand in hand with that persistence.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say what you said about persistence is great. I totally live by what you're saying, but I think more importantly, though, too, to be persistent, you also have to have a ton of patience as well, through the journey.
Yeah, you're right, James. There's about 6 or 7. I just focused on persistence. Patience is great. There's a lot of attributes that a salesperson needs to get to the promised land. Enthusiasm is a great one. When I was younger, working with a bunch of high school kids, we used to do door-to-door sales. We would have them run to the door so they'd be out of breath, because by being out of breath, they seemed to be more enthusiastic when they spoke than just getting up there. I mean, so there's all techniques and attributes that a salesperson needs to survive in this